Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. As promised, I'm going to walk you through the tones pack. We're just going to have a look at a couple of different ways to sound design with it. And of course, you can always follow along with at least the free version of the tones pack. There's 128 free wave cycles in there. And if you're happy with that, consider purchasing the whole pack. Anyway, let's go into the project. Here we have what I was working on in the last video and I've been working on for the last couple of days now. I'm just specifically going to focus on this part of the track. I do want to play it from a little bit earlier because I'm really happy with this build-up section here and I just want you to have a listen to it. After that, what we'll do is we'll create some one-shots with the different sound design techniques, as well as maybe have a look at one or two sequences that I made. But for now, let's have a listen to the example. And here towards the end, you can hear the slowdown that I also did the video on. So just for those that are curious, this is actually the same project that actually features that slowdown. Now quickly, before we continue, I want to say if you want to support the channel, make sure that you're subscribed and that you like the video. Also, if you want to support me financially, you can do so by looking at my products on Gumroad, as well as looking at my Patreon page. I'm actually running a sale on my Gumroad right now with 30% off if you use the promo code SummerSale23. All in lower cases, but this is running until the 24th and applies to all of my products, including my masterclass. So if you have been thinking about getting that, make sure that you check it out now. With that being said, let's get back into the video. For now though, let's go out of the sequences and let's go into the one-shots here. And I'm just going to start off with the easiest way to use the tone packs. And in my opinion, that's just to open one of the synths. In this case, I'm using Serum, but you can use any synth that just accepts wavetables, as they're essentially just functioning like a wavetable, but without this wavetable position not doing anything. That's pretty much by design, in the sense that I don't want to give you too many choices. You do have access to the full tables in here as well, where you can morph between all of the different frames. But again, these are just individual frames here. They're not meant to be morphed between like this. For now, I'm just going to pick a random one. Let's have a listen to what we have. We have a sound like that. I do like that, but I want to have something a little bit sharper. So I'm going to turn on oscillator B in this case, and we're going to get a different tone. I'm just looking at the waveform until I find something a little bit sharper like this. And that's already a synth that we can use. So for example, we can turn down the sustain, decay, and give it a little bit of extra release. Maybe give it some hyper dimension here. Bit of distortion after it. Let's go more dimension than hyper actually. You get something like that. I like to have my mix tight to the envelope actually, so I'm going to do this. Now I want to make my pattern. For this one, what I had in mind was to do something like a triple, like small stutter here and then one long note there. So the way that I'm doing that is like this, and then here we'll just make the note longer like this. Maybe I do want the first one on here, but I am going to add a LFO tool. We'll just use something like this and we'll just do that for the first part here. And then here we're gonna go down. Something like that. We'll add an OTT before this. And then I will also add a saturator. And then in between, we'll go with a stereo maker. This one I'm going to just set up to make us a nice bit of stereo with. And then we'll push it into the saturator here as well. And then you get something like this. That's obviously way too strong, so we'll tone that down a bit. That's nice. Now we can add our ambience. So we're gonna go with an echo here. Nice and long echo. I want to remove some of the lower frequencies that are gonna be present in here. And finally, I'll add a reverb. Let's go large space, chorus chamber here. Actually, let's go with the wooden hole. And then I go birch. And you can see that this is actually a pretty quick method. Obviously, when I'm not explaining things on camera, I'm much faster. So it usually takes me 1 or 2 minutes to get an actual finished synth sound out of that, which is really fast if you just want to lay down an idea within your project. Now, obviously, there's more things that you can do. What we haven't done is use the filter. What we could do in this case is add a bandpass filter on both of them and maybe add a little bit of extra modulation if we want to. Maybe we want this to go up and then down a bit again. Maybe a bit higher. Now, obviously, you can imagine that there's a lot more that you can do with this. It's not just the simple filtering and just using 2 oscillators like this. For example, what you could do is use one as an FM modulator. So I'm just going to be using phase plant as this demonstration. What you want to do is create an analog and then down here create a wavetable. In here, you're just going to navigate to the tone spec and then you can get whatever full table that you want. Let's just go with a random one here. Let's set this to a sine wave for now because it usually gives a little bit of a more pleasant result. Maybe we'll go something like this. And now you can hear the kind of tone that we're able to get from that. And obviously we can morph here. Maybe we want this. Maybe we want this. Maybe we actually want to use another analog here and just apply a little bit of FM here as well. That way we get a nice gritty tone. And again, if we want a little bit of modulation on there, we can add a bandpass filter. I'm just going to turn it up here and we're going to make a little sweep here. Maybe that's a little bit too much. What we'll do here as well is add a distortion unit before this so that we're really driving it in there. And then I'm going to add some spreads to make it nice and stereo wide. So we'll use this as a little bit of a sweep and we'll probably just put this right here. Let's get to the right octave and then just turn this up over time. We'll add our processing. We're going to start with an echo. I'm going to also add a saturator here because I don't want it to be too loud. And actually a saturator is going to make it louder, but it's also going to control the very highest peaks. We're going to put an EQ in front of this so that we can cut out the lower frequencies. Just taking on a bright reverb as well, and I'm going to remove all of the lower frequencies here so we get a nice reverb towards the end of the sweep when the frequency content becomes higher. And now we have a nice sweep that works well with what we're doing here with the kick and bass with a little bit of a roll. Now maybe you really don't have a wavetable synthesizer. Another cool way that you can use them is by using a sampler. So we're going to go Instruments, Sampler, and we're just going to go in there. I've just put one sample in here and I'm just going to set the sustain mode so that it loops. Obviously, these are meant to be wavetables, not exact samples. What that means is that they're not specifically pitched to any key. So the way that I like to do that is just to check what key I'm playing and what key comes out to make sure that those line up. So I'm going to play A#3 here, and we should expect A# on the analyzer here. We're getting a D#, which means that we need to tune it up. E, F, F#, G, G#, like this, +7. We get A# and A# on the lowest 2 harmonics, so we know that it's exactly in the key of A#. And from here you can do whatever sound design you want. Now one of the cool things about this tone spec is that you don't really even have to do sound design. So for example, say you feel like here, if I just want a little bit of a stutter effect or something like that, I can just do something like this. Just a small little stuttering impact that you get. Add a little bit of processing. I'm going to remove the lowest frequencies. I'm going to use the tape stop plugin from Deep Blue. I'm going to set the slowdown to 0.01. And then we'll set the trigger. Maybe let's set it on here. I set slowdown to 0.01. That doesn't work. Okay. We'll just set it manually then. I'm actually going to put this behind here so that I don't want it to pitch again stuff into the lower frequencies. And then what I want to do is I also want to slightly make it darker over time. And now you just have a little bit of an extra detail sounds that adds a little bit of extra excitement there. The final thing that I'll show you is a technique that I found this morning while I was working on a sequence. Now this looks very, very complex, I know, but it's basically 2 times the same thing. So we're just going to focus on one of these, which means that I'm also going to turn off these modulators or at least hide them. As you can see, we're loading one of the tones into the granular oscillator here. And you can see what I'm doing is I'm modulating the amount of grains that we have, as well as a filter that is sitting on top of that. What is really interesting is if we turn off these modulations temporarily, is how you can hear how the tones interact with just being in a granular synthesis engine instead of in a normal wavetable engine. So I've brought this patch back to its most basic form, and you can hear when I press a button and I start turning up the amount of grains, what happens to the sound when it starts to actually play. Obviously with no grains, with 0 grains, it's not going to play. But once I start to turn it up, you will hear what actually happens. So you get this nice cool pitching effect, which is not something that I expected in terms of behavior. Now obviously this is something that we can play with, so what I am doing here in this patch in particular is using a random modulator here, and that gives you something like this. Then together with a filter, what I also did is pan this to the right 70, and then I went into the other group. Obviously this is a duplicate of it with its own modulator, so these actually do different random modulators than this first part, and this is just sent to the left channel instead of to the right channel. Then together with a transgate and a delay, you get a sequence that sounds like this. So this is maybe cool for something like Dark Side or for Forest. So you can hear that the tone spec overall is just a very, very versatile product that can be used in all sorts of sidetrans. So that's going to be it for the video. Again, make sure that you download the free version of the tone spec at least so that you just have those tones to play with. And obviously, if you enjoy it, make sure that you get the full tone spec as well within the 24th of July so that you can get the 30% off using promo code SummerSale23. For now, this is going to be the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like. And if you're new here, make sure that you're subscribed. But that's going to be it. I hope you enjoyed and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.